Hello everyone, welcome back to Demon Hunters Duty Eternal. In today's episode, things are going to be a little bit different. This is not going to be a numbered episode where I continue the campaign. There's not going to be any campaign progress, but I will throw this in the playlist for anyone who's interested in viewing it anyway. I received a request to talk about my gear and equipment and my knights and their abilities, as well as throw in some tips and tricks for the mid-game playthrough. And so that's what I'm going to do in today's episode. So I hope you enjoy it. Go ahead and subscribe, like, and comment. Throw in your tips and tricks and anything you'd like me to know, as well as any advice for my viewers. I think the best way to go about this is I'm just going to start in the barracks and go through my knights. I'll talk about their equipment, why I've set them up the way I have, and what those classes are meant to do. I would just go in order, but I'd like to start with Voldred, because he has some interesting aspects about him. So, Voldred Storm, he is an interceptor. What is an interceptor? Their job is to get in close to the enemy and deal damage. They don't like taking a lot of damage, so they aren't a very tanky class, but they can dish out a ton of damage and they're very maneuverable. They can single out specific targets and target them, or they can just dish out their damage over a wide area. There are different ways that you can do this, and we'll talk about a few of those. But the first thing I want to talk about that has to do with the interceptor is the, I don't know the right word, but this thing here, focus. Focus is an aspect of the game that's not explained very well, and some of you may wonder, well, why are you using a equipment slot for a Sanctic Shard that gives you plus 50% focus? What does that do, and why is that useful? So to explain, I'm going to go ahead and look at his abilities here. So you go over to, let's say this one here, Teleport Boost. It says Auto Ability. Auto, 50% chance, 1 use a turn. When this knight uses a teleport ability, they have a 50% chance to gain 1 AP. Okay, so what does that do? He teleports, and half of the time he'll get his AP back. So he'll have 3 AP, he'll teleport, and then he has a chance to stay at 3 AP, so he can deal out more damage. Now, what focus does is that increases that chance. So this auto has a 50% chance to occur. But let's look over at my knight here. I have teleport boost, auto 100% chance to occur. Why is that? Because I've increased my focus. So I have 50% chance here, plus my focus crystal, which increases by 50%. So that brings it up to 100% chance to occur. When this knight uses the teleport ability, they have a 100% chance to gain 1 AP. And what is a teleport ability? Well, teleport and teleport strike. So, as long as you have the willpower to do it, this knight can teleport closer to someone and keep his AP. And then he can teleport strike and do some damage and still keep his AP. And this ability says once per turn. Alright, so teleport boost occurs once a turn. But then I've also upgraded Enduring Reflexes, which adds plus 1 use a turn for all their auto abilities. So that means that this teleport boost can occur twice in a turn. So like I said, I can teleport forward, keep my AP, and get a teleport strike, and keep my AP as well. So that is one reason that focus is very useful. But let's see what other auto abilities I have. I have Ruthless Precision. Now that's an upgrade up here. Ruthless Precision. Auto, when this knight crits a target with a melee attack, they have a 50% chance to gain 1 AP. So, if you strike an enemy and you get a critical hit, you have 50% chance to gain your AP back. Sounds good. Well, with that focus crystal, if I get a critical melee attack, then I have a 100% chance to get my AP back. But not only once, I get that ability twice because of Enduring Reflexes. So I can teleport in, I can teleport strike, and then theoretically I could get 2 critical hits. And I could do all of that and still be at 3 AP. So, if that sounds really good, it's because it is. And the reason I've upgraded him the way I have is these abilities, for instance, extra crit chance, extra crit chance, extra crit damage. So he can get critical hits more often. But I'll continue to talk more about that when I go over his equipment. Then he has the support fire ability, which is an auto right here, which will occur twice a turn again because of Enduring Reflexes. I have not upgraded the extra damage for it because this is a melee focused interceptor, but twice a turn when someone else near Voldred shoots a target with a ranged attack, he will also fire, doing 2 damage. So he doesn't do his normal bolter damage, but he will do 2 damage. So, not very useful, but a little bit of extra damage never hurts. And then I also have this ability Parry. Auto, 100% a turn. When this unit is hit by a melee attack, 100% chance to cancel it automatically. Now where did that ability come from? That came from my equipment. So I go to my loadout, melee weapon, force sword. His current equipment gives him a 50% chance once a turn to parry an attack. And what that does is it cancels out the damage from a melee attack. Again, 50% chance, it'll only occur half the time. But because of my shard here, that will occur 100% chance. And because of my Enduring Reflexes ability, that will occur twice. So again, like I said, the Interceptor is not very tanky. He doesn't have a lot of armor. He doesn't like to get hit. But he's always in the thick of the enemy and getting hit a lot. So one thing you can do is equip a sword like this, and he can parry twice every turn. So he can take 2 hits in melee every turn and receive 0 damage. So that is basically the main reason why I'm using this focus crystal, because he has so many autos that help. He gains a lot of AP and durability because of the auto. Next, I have him equipped with the Grey Blade. This is a tier 2 equipment. I may receive better equipment later, but for now, I'm using this because this weapon has plus 20% critical chance. And when I activate my Force Strike, it gains an additional 40% critical chance. So, let's take a look over here. If I can find where it is. Anyway, passive. This knight's melee attacks gain 15% crit because of my abilities. So 15% crit, plus 20% crit. Plus, I've equipped this scroll here, this tier 3 scroll, gives plus 20% crit. So that's 55% chance of getting a critical hit with my normal melee strike. Add the Force Strike, which increases another 40% chance to crit, and I have a 95% chance to critical the target with every Force Strike. And again, with my abilities, that is very useful because every critical, twice a turn, I'll get 1 AP back. What else is good for the Interceptor? The Interceptor would like willpower, because he teleports and uses willpower a lot. If I wasn't using this shard, I would probably be using, let's check it out here, the Sacred Incense to gain +6 willpower, because he uses willpower a lot, and he only has 8. Armor types. Let's see what armor he has equipped. +8 AP, or +8 HP, as well as +4 more if I upgrade it, and a little bit of armor. But the reason I have this armor on him is because it gives him a passive equipment slot. And that's why he's able to equip both of these instead of just one or the other. And again, I would like to equip willpower on him as well, so if you don't have gear like this, you could equip armor that gives you willpower, and he would benefit from that as well. Alright, so I think that kind of explains most of the Interceptor's abilities and focus, but I'm going to go back in to the abilities one more time, just to go over the build that I have done. So, this Interceptor, every knight has a passive ability that is unique to them. This particular Interceptor gains 2 HP, 1 max willpower, and 1 damage for his melee attacks. So he does +1 additional melee damage more than most Interceptors. But the downside is he cannot gain resilience. So as he levels up, he does not gain any resilience, which is this over here. So if he dies twice, he's just gone permanently, instead of the 5 or 6 times that most knights can be critically wounded. But as long as he's alive, he's quite a bit stronger. So it's useful to use him in melee because he has the extra damage. So the main thing, Hammer Hand gives you more critical hit chance. Oh, right here, sorry, this one's Force Strike. Hammer Hand, more critical hit chance, more critical hit damage, and then like I've already shown, these abilities give critical chance, critical damage, and AP back for critical hits. And then over on this side, we have Teleport, and then Swap Allies. I never really use this ability, but in order to get Teleport Strike and Teleport Boost, which I've talked about, you need to go through here. And then he can Warp Charge his Teleport Strike to do even more damage. And then I came down here because I wanted Enduring Reflexes, and the Support Fire is just a boon added to that. Beyond that, I upgraded the extra willpower, just because he needs as much willpower as possible. Alright, I hope that makes sense as to why I've equipped him the way I have, and what focus is used for. So let's move on to my next Interceptor. Let me find him real quick. They're on missions, but we'll go with Raven. Or no, we'll go with Drick first. So, he's equipped a bit differently. He has a Silencer and the Sacred Incense. Again, the Sacred Incense is for the willpower gain. You can see he has 19 willpower, much more than our first Interceptor. But why does he have a ranged weapon if they're meant to be melee? So, this might not be the best build, but he still accomplishes the same basic thought process as our melee Interceptor. And let's take a look. So, we had to upgrade up this path to give him access to the Silencer. That allows him to equip the weapon. It did take 2 entire levels, but now that he has the Silencer, what can he do with it? Well, he can still teleport, and he can still Teleport Strike, and he can still get the Teleport Boost, so he can gain his AP back from teleporting. same as our melee interceptor. The difference here is he can have support fire upgraded to do 5 damage per shot instead of the 2. And I believe his support fire can activate from farther away because the silencer has a farther range than the other, just the standard bolters. And there's an ability on the silencer. I can't really show you currently. Let me go to someone who's not on a mission, just to grab a silencer. Alright, so here is a silencer, and it has an ability called Scatter Shot. Target a spread attack over arc 45, range 9, deal 1 damage per 2 ammo. Depletes all ammo. So basically, my ranged interceptor's job is to teleport close, use the Scatter Shot ability to hit everyone in a large arc, to damage as many units as he can, and then I can use my additional AP to reload my weapon, because this takes all of my ammo. After that, he's close to any enemies that are left over, and he has 2 shots per turn of support fire. As we can see if we go back here. No, not Raven. Sorry. Drick. If we go back here, again, he has support fire, 100% chance, twice a turn. And he does 5 damage per shot. So we have another knight who targets a enemy who was not killed by the scatter shot, who has high health. And then, without any AP cost, twice a turn, Drick will assist and shoot as well, for a total of 10 damage added. So that's why I have him equipped the way I do. We'll go to my last interceptor, Raven. I have set him up to be... Let me see here. Raven. Yeah, I've set him up to be kind of a hybrid, just because I wanted to see different abilities. So again, this may not be the ideal build, but this kind of shows you what the interceptor is capable of. He is equipped with the Sacred Incense to gain the additional willpower, as well as the 20% crit chance. And he's equipped with the Stoic Blade. What does this do? It deals 6 damage, plus 60% crit, plus 2 crit damage. So that gives him a 60% crit chance. The blade itself may not do that. I'm sorry, he's on a mission, so I can't check his loadout. But between the different things he has a very high crit chance in melee. So just like Voldred, I have the critical abilities up here, and I have the Enduring Reflexes and Teleport Boost. So if I get critical hits, I'll get my AP back. If I teleport, I'll get my AP back. And I have Support Fire of 5 damage. So he's a mix of my other 2 interceptors. He does a good job in melee, and he has the Support Fire abilities. The downside is, because of how he is equipped, he doesn't have as much focus, and so he only has a 50% chance to get his AP back from teleporting and getting critical attacks. But he also has a blade that allows him to parry 1 additional time. Or no, his ability here. Enduring Reflexes. So he's still using a 4-sword, and he is able to parry twice. Alright, so that goes over the different builds of my interceptors, and talked about focus and why that's important, as well as willpower and critical hits for the interceptors. What do critical hits do, since we've talked about those a lot? If you get a critical hit on an enemy, it does extra damage, and you get to target a particular piece of that enemy to destroy. So let's say you can take off their ranged arm so they can't shoot at you, or you can take off their melee weapon, or you could add additional stun or other effects. So critical strikes are very useful. Alright, Garen Crow, we're not going to talk about him. Trek is a Tech Marine. We're not going to talk too much about the Tech Marines. They are the DLC, and I haven't figured out the ideal builds for them. I feel like I'm going towards a lot of, what are they called, servitors, and the ability, I'll check right here, where you get Mechanical Adept with a lot of servitors, and then if you were able to give him focus in any way, he would have a higher chance of gaining AP every time he used a servitor ability. So that's kind of the direction I feel like would be good, but I haven't figured out how to do that sufficiently well yet. So we'll leave that there for now. So we've got our interceptors, we've talked about our Tech Marine a little bit. Let's go over the Paladin.
Valda.
We have Mark here. The Paladin is a advanced class. You can't get him until mid-game. And what is his job? Well, let's see. He has a few different options. One of his abilities, the Emperor's Will, is he can give his willpower to someone else. So you could go down here and upgrade to pass his willpower to your interceptor, who is using willpower very often and needs a little boost to get an extra teleport strike in. So you could use him to hand over some willpower. That's not what I've chosen to do, but you can. You can also equip him with a Psy Cannon and upgrade his ranged abilities a little bit. Why would you do that on a mainly melee character? Well, I haven't done this yet, but I would like to attempt it if I get a second Paladin, because he can do the ranged abilities and still have a melee weapon. So that would mean he could do the Psy Cannon's special attack that does an area of effect blast, and then still go up in melee and hit someone. So I don't know if it's the most effective build, but it could be useful, and I'm interested to try it out. What else does the Paladin do? He can go over here and upgrade melee weapons, so he gets crit chance and increased damage on critical hits. Ruthless Precision, when he gets a critical strike, he gains AP back, just like the Interceptor. He can gain Hammer Hand as well, to gain critical hits more often. What else? Only in Death is an ability he can get, so that if he receives a critical wound, it's cancelled. I'm not sure that that is the best ability, but my knight came already equipped with it. And what's unique to the Paladin is he can equip this Storm Shield here instead of a ranged weapon. And so this gives him extra armor. So the Paladin can be kind of a tank character with extra armor, and it also gives him the Defend Position ability, which gives him even more armor, and lets him defend a zone and attack anyone who moves into it. So most Paladins are mostly melee tanks with some additional support here and there. But they do have the option of this ability here called Fury of the Ancients, which is a large area of effect strike in a cone. And as this one shows, it'll do 8 range and 6 damage. But you can warp charge the ability to gain an additional 6 damage. So at the cost of 4 willpower, you can do 12 damage to everyone in a large area of effect, which can be a very strong ability. So I've chosen to upgrade this Paladin to focus on critical melee strikes, as well as Fury of the Ancients, so that he can deal with area of effect when necessary. What is his equipment? I've equipped him with a shield for extra armor, and I've equipped him with the scroll for extra critical hit chance, and this hammer, the Destroyer of Chrysalis, because it adds critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and it has abilities to stun. So let's just take a look. This weapon here. It was not this powerful to start with, you had to do a lot of upgrades, but you can activate his Force Strike to add +3 stun to his melee attack. What is stun? Anyone who doesn't know, each enemy in this game has a health meter and a stun meter. You can kill them by depleting their health to 0, or you can deplete their stun meter to 0 and then perform a melee attack. And if you perform a melee attack when they are stunned, you will have the opportunity to execute them. What an execute does is it kills the target immediately, regardless of how much health he has left, and it gives all of your knights +1 action point. So if you can set up a stun, it can increase all of your knights' actions and kill high health targets. So stun can be very useful. What else? Let me check his armor. What is he currently wearing? This knight has +7 armor and resistance. I don't know, again, what the best armor is. I don't have any particularly good armor. I'm just using this one because +7 armor lets him perform his role very well and have a lot of armor and be able to tank for my other knights. Alright, so that's the Paladin. Let's see who's next. We have the Librarian, one of my favorite classes. Alright, so let's see what QPD has to offer. He's equipped with the Warp Breaker, which, if you're watching this in order, you have not seen yet, but it is a very effective weapon. One of my episodes later on in the playlist will explore using this weapon. But anyway, I've equipped him with the Sacred Incense for max willpower increase. He uses willpower a lot. It's very nice to give him as much willpower as you can. So why is that? The best ability for the Librarian is Gate of Infinity, with its extra upgrades as well. Why is that so powerful? First off, he can teleport himself forward, similar to the Interceptor, but if you warp charge the ability, right here, activate to teleport all knights to the same location. It increases the willpower cost from 2 to 5. So it's a high willpower use ability. But what it does is it takes the Librarian and all of your other knights and teleports them to the location. And why is that good? Well, when you see a group of enemies, a patrol of enemies that you need to attack, you're often pretty far away from them. Maybe 2 or 3 AP, just to get into contact with the enemy. And so what's happening is you're using 2 AP, or like I said, possibly 3, just to reach the enemy. And then what happens is you end your turn with only having dealt a small amount of damage, and the enemy has a turn to act and damage all of your knights. But if you use the Gate of Infinity ability, it will take 1 action point from your Librarian, and it will teleport your entire group right on top of the enemy, saving all of them 2 to 3 AP. So you're using 1 AP to save yourself possibly, 12? 8 to 12 AP? And that lets you get a full round of attacks in on the enemy before they can act. That in itself is the best thing about the Librarian, and once you begin using this tactic, it's very hard to give up. So what do you want to upgrade with the Librarian? You want as much willpower as possible. As you can see, all these willpower options have been upgraded, as well as this one up here. He needs as much willpower as he can get to continually teleport the group. But in addition to that, he has other options. I have upgraded this librarian with Vortex of Doom. It's a large area of effect blast that deals 8 damage to the whole area. It only costs 2 willpower. It's a very effective way of dealing area damage. I've also upgraded this librarian with the abilities up here. I don't know how to pronounce that really, but it's Empyrean Domination. And this ability decreases the warp surge. And as I'm sure you all know, when a warp surge occurs, there is some negative effect that's going to happen. Some extra enemies, or your teleport will be disabled, or your knights will be wounded in some way, or receive a negative amount of willpower, lots of different things. So every time the warp surge occurs, it's negative for you. So by using a little bit of willpower, this librarian can reduce the warp surge from 50 all the way down to 100%. So you can be at 95% or even 100% chance for the warp surge to occur at the end of your turn, and you can activate this ability and bring it all the way back down to 0, saving yourself having to deal with that issue. So if you're finding warp storms or warp surges to be a problem, this might be a good option. Let's go to my other librarian and just show you what he upgraded instead of the warp storm abilities. He went down for Psychic Shriek. And as we can see here, this targets a blast over area 1 at range 10 to deal 0 damage. But it has plus 3 stun damage. And with all of its other upgrades as well, it can go up to plus 5 stun damage. And as I said, if you're trying to focus on stunning the enemy instead of dealing with their health, 5 stun is a very effective way to be able to stun and execute your target. He also gains this ability Price of Power if you're down in this corner of the skill tree. 25% chance to gain 1 willpower when using a warp charge ability. And he uses warp charge abilities very often, because he warp charges his teleport, and he warp charges his Psychic Shriek to increase the stun. Now you can see 25% chance to occur. Let's see what it's actually at. He's got a 50% chance for this to occur. Why is that 50 instead of 25? Because I've upgraded his focus a little bit. So it still won't happen all the time, but half the time. As well as teleport boost, like the Interceptor, 75% of the time he will gain his AP back. And what's particularly interesting about this librarian is the way I've equipped him. This Rod of Heracus here doesn't seem very good. It only does 4 damage, but let's just take a look at it real quick. It's a warding stave. This warding stave, after being upgraded, this knight has a 75% chance to trigger Aegis Shield at the end of their turn. Plus, this knight's Aegis Shield ability has +1 armor. So Aegis Shield is an ability that most of the knights have, where they use an AP to gain armor. So if you're about to be hit, you can armor up and take less health damage. With this rod, and 75% chance to occur, plus my 25% focus, that means 100% chance. So every single turn, his Aegis Shield will activate, without me having to use an AP. So that saves me the AP of having to armor up, and it gives me the extra shield. I only do 4 damage with my melee strike, but this guy does not often use his melee strike, as he is mostly focused on teleporting around and using his abilities, and he also has Vortex of Doom to do area of effect damage. As for armor, again, this guy, I just put on any armor that'll give him willpower, but also this immunity to drained ability is very nice, because some enemies have the ability drained. What that does is when they hit you, it also takes away some willpower. And a librarian without willpower is not very powerful. So you need to keep his willpower high so that he can continue to use his abilities. Alright, what else? Apothecaries? Yeah, let's go over the apothecaries. The apothecary's main job is just to heal and buff your other knights. So let's see how they can do that. This apothecary Clyde, I decided to use Biomancy. And Biomancy is a buff to your squad rather than a heal. And the only Biomancy that I really like is, let me find it here, Iron Arm Biomancy right here. And what it does is it increases the stun damage of the knight that you give the boon to. So this apothecary will walk up to one of my other knights and apply Iron Arm Biomancy, and then the knight that he applies it to will get an additional +2 stun because of the extra 1 here. So 1 stun +1, a total of 2, to every melee strike. So a standard melee strike will add 1 stun to the enemy. But with this Biomancy on, that will mean every standard attack will do 3 stun damage instead of 1, making it much easier to stun the enemy and then get an execute and get your AP back. There's also this ability down here called Sympathetic Biomancy. Again, I don't really like any of these other abilities, and I don't use them often. But this one here can be useful, because it gives you a small chance, whenever you use a Biomancy on someone else, to receive the effects yourself as well. Now, if you were able to give this knight some extra focus and put that chance up, then you could allow another knight to gain a lot of stun damage, as well as himself, and then between the two of them, they might be able to stun and execute more effectively. What other abilities have I done? I decided that because I was going to be using Biomancy, that I might as well get some Terminator armor and some melee abilities, so that I could be close to my other knights and assist with the stun damage and kills. I won't get critical hits very often, but when I do, I get my AP back, and I can get seeds with a melee strike, and that's mainly the reason I've upgraded these abilities. The other option for apothecaries, we've got my apothecary Turok here.
Han!
Let's check out his abilities. He did not go Biomancy. He went a different route. He went for healing, so that he can heal my squad members, but mostly I wanted to give him these servo skulls. Extra equipment slot to equip the servo skull, along with extra uses of servo skulls. There is an apothecarian skull here that helps with Biomancies, but that's not useful for this apothecary, and for my other apothecary I felt like he was in melee range anyway, so I didn't need to use this skull. I also went for extra willpower and Scourging for bleed, as well as Emperor's Judgment for hobbled, just to test things out. This is not the best build. As I found out, bleed is not a very effective tool in this game, just because its damage is too slow. I did want to test it out. At some point I'll probably retrain just to gain these 2 ability points back, but bleeding is just not very effective. It sounds good, and the damage it applies can be nice, but only if you're using a very slow playstyle, which is not the way I prefer to play this game. On the other hand, Emperor's Judgment, I have found a few times where it is useful to immobilize your targets. so they cannot close with you or so they cannot escape. So I do find Emperor's Judgment to be more useful than Scourging, but the majority of the time I am using this Apothecary for a few melee strikes. If I can get a critical, that's great, but mostly using his servo skulls and some healing here and there. For his loadout, I currently have a Medicae skull. It's a tier 2, it'll heal 7, and he has 7 uses of this skull. So 7 times per mission I can heal 7 with no AP cost and no willpower cost. And then I was able to find this Disruptor skull. You will see in one of the missions that I put it to use, but that'll be in an episode in the future. But he can use this 8 times, and this will be a very effective way to deal 4 damage to a target and disrupt them, which will stop them from using their abilities like Overwatch or Suppression or those kind of things. And you can use this up to 8 times in one turn or spread it out, and it does not take any AP. You just have that many uses. So that's how I use my Apothecaries. Let's see. I have 1 Purgator.
Rugen.
Let's go over his abilities and stats. This Purgator had the ability Quartermaster, where he gained 1 ammo for his equipped grenades. Now that's not on every Purgator, but that's what this guy had. So I decided to focus on grenades for him. So up over here, he gets an extra grenade slot, as well as extra ammo, and extra area of effect for his grenades. And as we can see, right here, I've equipped him with 2 different types of grenades. This one can deal 8 damage in an area of effect, and I can throw this 5 times a turn. Crack Grenade does armor break, and 3 damage as well. Or no, 6 damage, and armor break. What armor break does is actually not explained very well in the game, but it will break the armor so that if the enemy is still surviving, they will have that much less armor on the next turn, but it also does additional damage the turn they are struck with it. So this grenade will do 6 damage to an enemy that has 0 armor. But if an enemy has 3 armor, for example, because this is armor break 3, what will happen is this grenade will break the armor and then deal 6 damage, which is effectively 9 damage to the armored target, because it breaks the armor before the damage is applied. So that's a tip for anything with armor break. If they have armor, it does additional damage, effectively. So anyway, I've upgraded him to use grenades. He's also using a Psy Cannon, which has an area of effect blast ability, which is similar to using a grenade. So this Purgator has a lot of area of effect damage. He is a ranged character. And then I also gave him the ability Astral Aim. The reason I did that is because sometimes your area of effect damaging is just not very good against one high health target. So with Astral Aim, you can get a 100% chance critical strike, and you can do extra damage because criticals do more damage than a normal strike. Plus, you'll be able to target part of that enemy to destroy. So let's say you're not able to kill an enemy and he's going to shoot you next turn. Well, you can get a critical strike on him and shoot off his gun arm and disable his ranged abilities. So I throw a lot of grenades, I use my Psy Cannon for area effect blasts, and then when necessary, I'll use Astral Aim for precision strikes. That's how I use this Purgator. Let's see. Anyone else? just the Justicar here. The Justicar is an interesting unit. He can be used in a few different ways. It just depends on the playstyle you like. One thing he can do is he can gain a lot of armor. His passive ability, just for being a Justicar, it says the Justicar gains +1 armor with their Aegis Shield ability. So most other knights get 2 armor when they activate their Aegis Shield. The Justicar will gain 3. So in the beginning of the game, he is effective as a tank. He can be equipped with Terminator armor for additional armor, and then he can upgrade abilities for his Aegis Shield to give it even more armor. And then he has the Fortress ability, where he can use his armor and give it to someone else. So for example, we said that the Interceptor was not very tanky. Well, you could use Fortress after using your Aegis Shield and getting all this armor, and you can throw it onto your Interceptor who's in trouble. So he can definitely be used as a damage sponge for himself or for others. He can also use the ability Provoke, which will allow him to provoke enemies that are close, and they will attack him instead of other knights. So you can armor up and use Provoke and just be a tank for your knights. He also has Enduring Reflexes. He gets +1 use of his auto abilities every turn. Well, what auto abilities does he have? Let's see. The only one that I have equipped at the moment is Ruthless Precision, which if he gets a critical strike, he'll gain AP back. And he can do that twice a turn with the combination of these 2 upgrades. What other abilities? I've used Hammerhand, so I can get a critical hit when I need to, and that will also, again, give me my AP back. Only half the time, but if you have enough focus, you can get that up to 100% chance. What else can he be used for? He can equip a Psy Cannon, like the Paladin, if you want to. He can be a ranged support with melee as well. And then what are these abilities up here? Rend the Unclean. Strike all targets within a blast area 2 to deal 5 damage, knockback, and stun. So this is an ability similar to the Paladin's ability, except this is, I think, a circle around yourself and not an arc. And this can be really good if you have provoked all the enemies to come close to you, and then you use Rend the Unclean and strike a large number of enemies all at once. That's not how I've chosen to upgrade this particular Justicar, because I went with Honor the Chapter, as well as Crushing Charge. Honor the Chapter is a very useful ability. You can give your other knights extra AP and willpower. When you're giving the willpower, it's not a willpower generator, so it's actually you effectively are losing willpower, but if one of your particular knights needs the willpower for a specific move, you can transfer willpower to them so that they can get an effective turn. But the AP gain can be up to 3, so you can use 1 action point to give another knight up to 3 action points. So you're effectively generating +2 AP for the turn, which can be very effective if you want to give AP to your Interceptor and allow him to get a few more critical hits. I also upgraded Crushing Charge because I have a stun squad and I want to be able to stun a lot of enemies. But the other use for Crushing Charge that not a lot of people may realize is that the direction you travel can go up to range 10. So normally it takes 1 AP to move around 5 spaces forward. But if you charge 10 spaces forward for 1 AP, you're effectively getting 2 APs worth of movement out of 1 AP. And then if you're hitting a unit as well and adding some stun, that's just a bonus. So sometimes if you just need to close with the enemy, you can use Crushing Charge just to save AP and allow you to get an additional attack on them once you've closed in. Alright, I think I've basically covered my squad and the reasons why I've upgraded them how I have. I hope that that was interesting. A few more tips and tricks. In the missions... sorry about that. In the missions where you go... what is it called? The Morbus. Yeah, so the Morbus here, these gates. You will not see this on your screen until after you've encountered a Morbus mission, but if 5 of these gates open, you lose the campaign. So on a Morbus mission, you will have to get close to a gate and defend the gate for a number of turns while Vakir closes it. One useful tip that I was not aware of at the beginning, but I have learned through playing and through some comments on my videos, is that Vakir has the ability Banish, where she can banish any demonic enemy. Guarding these gates is usually a couple bloom spawns that have very high health, and it's hard to destroy them both. But Vakir can walk up to them and use the Banish ability and destroy one just with 1 AP, and you can use your other knights to focus down the other one. That saves you a lot of time and extra damage. What else? In the DLC, we've got these missions here that have this little red, these red lines. Those are called Technophage missions. They are extremely difficult. Probably more than twice as difficult as normal missions. The reason for that is because every patrol has approximately twice as many enemies as normal. So in a normal mission, you might fight 3 of your Plague Marines. Well, instead you're going to get 6. Why is that more than twice as hard? Well, maybe you have enough damage to kill 3 Marines, and so you kill them all and they don't get to damage you at all. But if there are 6 of them and you kill 3 of them, well, now there's still 3 left and your turn is over, and so they get 3 attacks on you instead of 0. So that makes these missions a lot harder than you might think. At the beginning of the game, if you are not confident of your ability to deal with these missions, then I would just recommend avoiding them and go for the normal standard missions that don't have the red surrounding it. Because they'll give you, just the same amount of rewards, and you don't really need a lot of Archaeotech at the beginning of the game. So you can just avoid doing those missions until you've gained some levels. And I feel like that will be helpful to many new players, just to avoid these missions entirely until you've leveled up a bit. There are probably many more tips and tricks that I could give you, but this video has already gone longer than I anticipated. Let me know if you enjoyed it. For sure, leave comments of anything I missed or didn't explain well. Again, I made this video in response to a comment that was requested to look at some of the specifics of my equipment and why I've upgraded the way I have. I don't know if this was a very effective explanation, but I hope it was. I hope it answered some of your questions. Feel free to ask specific questions, and I will try to address that in some of my later videos. Again, this is kind of going to be placed in the middle of the playthrough. I've already recorded more gameplay, and so I wanted to answer these questions and not delay a few weeks getting to new videos when I've already recorded videos that will not have addressed your questions. So, you don't have to watch this video if you don't want to. It is not a numbered video. Nothing happened on the campaign. And on the next episode, I'll just continue as normal. So I hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and ask me any of your questions, and I will try to answer them. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day.